Freedom House, so it's a zinc roof. So I probably have to speak a bit louder today. Thank you for being here. I just flew back from Bartica, and in the past several days I've spent some time in Port Kaituma, Matthews Ridge, Mabaruma, and now Bartica. And it was a welcome relief from the madness of Glenlyle and the ineptitude of Norton, the daily dose that we have here in Georgetown. So I think it's a good therapy. And those of you who want to get away from this craziness should sometimes do that trip, because you meet real people, you hear about real concerns, and what you find are people who are willing to put in the effort to change their own lives. And they instinctively know which party is focused on the issues that matter to them. They're very discerning people, not just in the hinterland, but rural areas when you go to Linden, etc. And here too, ordinary people generally. They can separate the nonsense and the gaffe from real plans and from a commitment when they see real commitment to their progress. And so it's heartwarming sometimes to go on these visits. They re-energize you, because although people do complain about their infrastructure and they want more done in their communities, they come from a genuine place. And you can only want to assist because you know they're not doing it from vindictiveness or just to make a political statement. So, talking about political statements, we have had quite a few in the past week since I held the last press conference. We've had the launch of the APNU local government campaign in Georgetown, and the Demerara waves acting like God, multiplying the loaves like Jesus. They multiplied, 60 persons became 250, the 60 in attendance. So we were watching it carefully, and we were surprised by the number that the Demerara waves quoted, because we actually did a head count. And then it's not new people. Many were made up of the candidates and people from other regions that came, but leadership of the PNC. So the people in that community, which is a stronghold of the PNC, did not really show up to their campaign launch in the city. And I wouldn't blame them. Why would I want to show up to a party launching a local government campaign for the city when I've underserved? The same people who will mount the platform, and many did, like the councillors, were the ones who had no interest in my development in the last several years they've been in government in the city. And so Norton did at the rally that they called, his 60 persons rally, he did a number of things. He, first of all, complained that I talk too much, that it was actually funny. I find it very interesting when he speaks about these things. He said, he complained about me talking. I'm not going to read everything, but then he said, but now he got to come every Thursday after I done talk to talk. So there is Norton complaining that I talk after him, his Thursday morning thing. So he as I said before, Norton is a very petty person. You're the leader of the opposition. I'm the general secretary of a party. I have to expose your nonsense if you talk nonsense. It's my job to respond to the lies that you you peddle, and you've kept peddling in this country for a long time. So the entire rally, if you look at it, and I would urge you to read it out of just interest. Read the transcript or listen to them, all the speakers who spoke. They didn't have a single thing to speak about Georgetown. They didn't tell the people of Georgetown how they're going to improve their lives. Now, this is a local government launch, and they're speaking in Georgetown. And many are the councillors in Georgetown. They didn't give account to the people for their track record in the city, because they've been managing the city for 57 years since independence. They did not say, here is what we're going to do for the city if we get re-elected, and lay out the plan. 90% of their speeches by the senior leaders of the PNC and the councillors were cussing the PPP, and I featured prominently in the cuss out for almost every speaker. But I've grown accustomed to that. But it's not how you feel about Jagdeo that matters to the people in the city. It's whether you're going to provide better services to them. And that's what they want to hear. None of that came, and this was their launch. So it was a big disappointment. Contrast that to what we are doing in every one of these places. I've gone to New Amsterdam, and we had a manifesto, and I spoke to the activists, and I said, here are some of the things that you can promise, because they are doable if you win in the city. And you would have the full backing of the government if you do that. And it's all positive. I said to them, stay away from the negatives. Stay away. People know about APNU track record. Not a single part in our flyer would we deal with the past. We just focus on what we're going to do in these places if we have an opportunity to control. Now, one thing was very revealing about Norton, and it shows the pathetic nature of the whole PNC, but it's more particularly its leader. We have already exposed by now that he would keep lying. He will never back down from the lie that he told to the people of this country that they are contesting in almost every constituency and all the areas. We now demonstrated that was a lie. He never apologized for it. But when a leader of a party has to go his own stronghold and say, we will win in Georgetown, the PPP will now win in Georgetown. That is like me going to Port Morant and saying, the PPP will win in Port Morant. It's a foregone conclusion. In like Port Morant's case, I would never say that in Port Morant, because we'll get the bulk of the votes. When you have to start defending in your stronghold that we will win and reassure yourself that we will win, you're very worried and you're scared. And that's the tone of their campaign. So that is why they have to lash out at everyone and everything and lie again to the people of Georgetown. So what I predicted that they were telling the vendors through whisper campaigns, because they're known for this, Norton actually said it publicly. We predicted they were going to do this. He said, I want to warn the vendors that they're out of power in Georgetown, and every day up news so that you could continue to vend. Something like that. It's a bit garbled, what he said. But he's saying what we predicted. They will lie to the vendors, that we will displace the vendors and clear their livelihood. He went on to talk about the Georgetown and the voters list, etc. Then Christopher Jones, who is the chief whip for the opposition, he mounted the platform, and instead of saying anything for Georgetown, Mr. Barber-Chair then started talking about Jagdeo's phantom death squad. Now, this is an old thing. Remember, we dealt with this right here at the press conference. I pointed out how they used to peddle this lie about us killing 400 people, and the expose that was done in the Starbuck News that destroyed this whole argument. It was a total lie. But they spread that rhetoric, the rumor, in particularly Afro-Guyanese among young kids, so that to alienate them from the PPP. In this day and age, when that has been disproved, when there's evidence that it's a lie, he talks about that. And this is a Georgetown campaign. Coretta McDonald, the gold program is a waste of time. Scholarships weren't a waste of time when ministers and their children were getting scholarships. Now 13,000 people are studying on the gold program. It's a waste of time. Those people are wasting their lives. So, and then they brought out Mr. Mentor too, and he focused on Jagdeo. Well, you recall I said something about somebody who was busy trying to sell out all the properties in the city. Well, it was Mr. Mentor. I didn't want to call his name last week, but now since he has joined the fray, I might as well mention to you that he's busy going around every place trying to find every single piece of land that is owned by the city and trying to strike some deal on the sale of the land. We have had to put a stop to many of those. So this is what took place at the rally, what they call their rally, the 60 persons rally, and to launch their local government campaign. I didn't know if it was a countrywide launch or Georgetown, but nothing for the residents in the city. That is what we can come to expect. So as I said, they've been speaking a lot. Norton said he would speak 3 times a week. But no, people, if you look at the live viewership on his programs, it's really pathetic. You know, the people don't really pay too much attention to what he says. Nevertheless, as the General Secretary of the party, I have to accord him some little respect in responding to some of the things that he has said. So he weighed in also opportunistically at a press conference now he had last week. He weighed in on the issue of the insurance, full liability coverage for insurance and or the financial assurance. And I think Mr. Norton has a big issue with understanding the difference. Like with so many things, I pointed out that it's not an easy matter to deal with. And that is why we have let, for a number of years, the politicians, we as politicians, like with the audit, we try to keep ourselves away from giving directions to the technical people who are handling the audit because we didn't want to influence their judgment. They have one clear direction, which is to look out for the best interests of the country. But it's a technical issue, and the specialists should deal with that. So too at the EPA, we have made it clear that Exxon has to meet all of its financial obligations. We strengthened the environmental permit to deal with spill. We made sure that in the last permit, they have to bring in a capping stock in the country that would allow us to cap a well easily if it blows out, so that you don't have to import it only when or if a spill takes place, so you can cap that easily. We have said that they have to have subscriptions to bring in more. Strengthen it enormously. I'm not going to go through the details here again today. I've done so at other occasions about spill water and cradle-to-grave management of waste. If you look at the permits that we have published, you will see the evolution and the strengthening of these permits. Now, the issue of the parent guarantee assurance was outstanding for a long time. They submitted the $600 million of liability coverage that is from the local company. And that is paid for by a premium. We check the premium. The premium is in line with international standards because it comes out of cost oil. So all of that, we ensure that that happens. The negotiation on the parent company guarantee was protracted, but there was no issue as to whether they had to give a parent guarantee. There was no issue about whether that should be done. It's protracted, but it's done by technical people. If you look at the statement issued today by the EPA, I want to advise Norton and the others to read this. Don't just jump into issues that you don't understand. Every person now has become a specialist on insurance and insurance liability and full liability coverage and what premium you should pay and unlimited insurance and all of that. We pointed out there is a reason why the EPA and the EPA in its own determination made that decision, would appeal this judgment. First of all, the judgment we believe was unfair in its description of the EPA as a decrepit agency that had abdicated its responsibility. They don't know the hard work of the staff of the EPA and the technical people, what work has been done over the past year and a half on this issue. So to be so judgmental, with loose language in a judgment, basically disparages the efforts of tons of professionals who have worked at this agency diligently to ensure that this assurance is given. And even before the judgment came out, I said right here that they had already settled on the amount and the language, and they were waiting on the approval from the partners, the co-venturers, to move to the signing. This was even before the judgment. Now the judge, but there, as we pointed out, there is nothing called, in an insurance world, an unlimited assurance policy. So this was a major issue for us. And today, in the statement, I would urge you to look at the EPA statement and urge all of those who have become specialists, including Norton and his the economist who is not an economist, Elson Lowe, to read this. It's a complex issue. The EPA sets out all of the work it has been doing, with whom it's been consulting, with what regulators around the world, in the UK, in many areas, about the comparables before they came up with numbers. And they say on the EPA Act itself, it says the Section 31(2) of the EPA Act, which states that a requirement for financial assurance shall specify the amount. The Act says you have to specify the amount. So clearly, if you have to specify the amount, you have to then do some simulations as to what would be the likely cost. And we said already that there are 3 levels of this, and which we've explained numerous times. I saw Mr. Bagwandin in an article today pointed this out. They did some crude estimates. Every person can do their own estimates, but you look at the range between low scenario and worst case scenario, and you will see what the likely cost of the spill would be, but also what recourse the EPA has. First of all, the first line is the $600 million. Then another line, which would be about the $14 billion of assets that the company likely would have, 14 billion, so that gives you 14.6 billion, and then the 2 billion parent company guarantee, so about $16.6 billion. That is, the estimate ranges up maybe in the maybe $2-3 billion, depending on the case, the worst case scenario. But you cannot, you can be criticized because it's all assumption based when you do simulations. So you have to, at some stage, come up with a number based on the assumptions you make. So it's not an easy thing, and that's why we've let the technical people do this. We're not, in spite of the charges that we like to get our hands into everything. See, Stavrou said that of me. So that we allow the professionals to act independently at the EPA. So I would urge these people who are conveniently, Norton and the others have nothing to do. So they just wait on something issue that comes up in the media, and they hope, oh, it's getting a little bit traction. So let's conveniently jump in and say we support it without even understanding the issue. And that is what happened here at Norton. Norton convened a press conference to talk about it, but he didn't understand it. Secondly, at the same press conference, he was asked about whether they would renegotiate the Stabroek contract. So you have a clear answer from the PPP. A clear answer. It was clear when we were in opposition. We said we will not renegotiate the Stabroek block contract. However, here are the things we will do. 7 things we listed, basically, including new act, the new Natural Resources Fund Act, the new Petroleum Act, new Natural Resources Fund Act, a new PSA, a whole range of stuff. All of that we said we will do. We were to ensure that the country gets more. But a clear, unequivocal policy in opposition and in government, no. So they signed this contract when they were in government, the Stabroek contract. Now they're in opposition. He's refusing to say what they will do with it. So that is the convenience that you get. They're very convenient about policy making. You get clarity from the PPP. We get criticized for it, but we stand our ground on this and say why. We give explanations. I've already given the explanations why we decided to take this course of action. We did not want to kill the investment momentum, given the net zero policy and the need to switch the oil assets into monetary assets at an accelerated pace. That is why we are licensing more of these FPSOs in an aggressive timeline without compromising the due diligence, and why we would not want to renegotiate the contract now, because it would kill the momentum for all investments in the country in the oil and gas sector. So we explained ourselves. You may not agree with it, but we've explained ourselves. They don't give a clarity, and they don't explain the lack of clarity. So again, at the press conference, it exposed the incompetence, the wishy-washy nature of his knowledge about the sector and the people who were surrounding him. Now, at the same press conference, there is one thing that is very disgusting that took place. That he said, in speaking about Barbara Pilgrim, because Ms. Pilgrim, a PNC MP, been with the PNC all her life, is working for campaigning for the PPP now. And so apparently he was offended because she said something in the media in the campaign, urging people to support the PPP. And he speaks about her. This is what he said. When you prostitute yourself, you will always be used. He is saying that she's prostituting herself. Now, first of all, it's disparaging. It's disgusting. But I don't see all the women's group now coming out to criticize Norton. You let a PPP person said that about any individual, you would have seen widespread condemnation from TIGI and all these convenient so-called civil society people. But not a word, because she decided to choose to support the PPP, which is her constitutional right to do so, which is her, as a free person in this country, to do that. But she's prostituting herself to the PPP. That is his disregard, and that should be condemned. He then went after the Kashif and Shanghai group, and because they issued a statement, and they were right that he's the worst leader the PNC has ever seen. Not that they have in that crop of leaders now any who is better than him, because I've seen their performance too. But they pointed out, he's gone after them again for contracts. The problem he has is with Afro-Guyanese making progress under the PPP. It doesn't fit into his narrative of discrimination. So it's okay for anybody to get contracts. If you're Indo-Guyanese, you can't get and PPP, you mustn't get any help or contracts, because that's discrimination. And if you're Afro-Guyanese or Amerindian and you get a contract, you're drinking soup. That's his thing, that you're drinking soup from the PPP. So he's not really interested in people getting contracts. His problem is not the race, it's the PPP. It's PPP, it's not the race. But they're race baiting all the time. He was asked about it, always race baiting at every one of the press conferences. So he rolled out a number of people, but I want to go through one thing in particular, where you would see the incompetence. Let me find this bit. I clipped it out because I wanted you to understand that this is what Adam Harris asked the leader of the opposition at a press conference. We have the largest project ever, a record-breaking budget, but the government has gone back to the Natural Resource Fund for an additional $30 billion, right? We've gone back to the Natural Resources Fund for an additional $30 billion. What message is this sending to Guyana, and how does the opposition view this? So Norton weighs in. First of all, it's a manifestation of the fact that the People's Progressive Party doesn't budget properly. It has been 6 months, and if you got to come back to the Parliament for additional funds when you should have budgeted properly, it's an indication that they don't budget properly. The second thing, it's an indication that they're incompetent. Two things. We didn't budget properly, we're incompetent. At the same press conference, Davina Bagot says, I'm asking if you're concerned that the nation is yet to know exactly how these funds are being spent, given that we have not heard from the investment committee that was appointed by President Ali. Norton then goes on to talk about all Guyanese should be concerned, etc. The usual thing. Now, what are the facts? I am shocked that, first of all, a reporter is linking the investment fund to the spending in the budget. And Norton didn't know about that and couldn't point it out. Now there is the Natural Resources Fund. We said all receipts and withdrawal from the funds must be made public, not like the Jordan period. If the Minister of Finance doesn't make that public, then he can go to jail for 10 years. Every receipt into the fund and every withdrawal from the fund must be made public. So at the budget time, there is now a formula that we put in the law. The formula, when applied to the total balance at the end of the year, which we all know, and we know the formula, will determine for the fiscal year, like 2023, how much money will come from the fund. The total sum from the fund to the budget. So every time we withdraw from the fund, we notify. It's not changing the amount that will be withdrawn. That's determined at budget time and by formula already. You don't even need a budget to determine that. So every time we withdraw from the fund, we notify, but we say, assuming there is 100 billion or 50 billion to be withdrawn from the fund for this year, say 50 billion Guyana dollars. If we withdraw now 10 billion from the fund and put it into the treasury, it means 40 million would remain to be withdrawn. So we notify the public 10 million has been withdrawn now. Next month we may withdraw another 10, but we're not increasing the total sum. It's the same 50 billion at the end of the year. It's just that we passed a law so people will know when this will happen for transparency. They didn't know this. Norton doesn't know this. It's unbelievable that a leader of the opposition will say they've gone back to withdraw an additional 30 billion from the natural resources of the fund. When that is what Adam Harris asked him. Well, Adam Harris, I can forgive Adam Harris. I see he complained about the comrade leader business, that he used to call me comrade general secretary, and I didn't object. But I'm not going to focus too much on Adam Harris this week. Just that an incompetent leader of the opposition could not point this out to the reporter to say, no, it's not additional. Please, you have it wrong. But he concluded the PPP doesn't know how to budget, and we're incompetent. It is his incompetence that he reflected here, his lack of knowledge. Can you imagine this? Somebody who wants to be the president of this country, who couldn't point out this little minor difference to the people. And he could have easily said, please, the investment committee relates to the investment of the money that remains in the Natural Resources Fund, not the part that comes to the budget. Because the Natural Resources Fund now, we put a management team to manage that, and the investment committee will guide that. So the money that will be saved for the long term in the Natural Resources Fund, the unallocated sum to the budget, will have to be invested. And the investment committee is related to those resources that will remain in the fund, not how it's spent. That what comes to the budget and how what is spent. Every cent that comes to the budget and has to be spent has to be appropriated by the parliament and debated in the parliament as part of the budgetary process. But this is a simple thing. Here you can't get too complex with Norton and the others. You have to almost dumb down yourself to give some of these explanations. This is what he said of me, which I found. So he, at one of his things. Unfortunately, Jagdeo comes over as dumb, insane, uncaring, or just a bare-faced fabricator who develops his own narrative to browbeat the people of Guyana. Will not be browbeaten. Jagdeo cannot be trusted. He's unfit to manage anything in Guyana and should resign. By extension, if I'm that incompetent, then you should also resign, Norton, for not knowing a basic fact or lying to the people of the country. But I see this, actually, much worse has been said about me, so I thank Mr. Norton for being so benign in describing me. Thirdly, so he didn't go to today's press conference, the leader of the opposition press conference, sent not a bunch of people. So, so what were the key issues here? Again, they talk about, Mahi Paul said that Claudette Singh must stop being a poodle of the PPPC. Amanza Walton said, the current chairman is constantly voting with the PPP practically every time there's an issue, and that's exacerbating the problem. And then Coretta McDonald said a few days ago that the death is announced of Claudette Singh, funeral to be announced later. I saw the chairman of the Elections Commission writing the Commissioner of Police, because rightfully so, they feel threatened, copying the speaker about this death threat to her. Not a word from the NGOs about threatening the life of the chairman of GCOM or disparaging a woman, another woman. They did it to Barbara Pilgrim, now cussing Claudette Singh. Now, it was the same Claudette Singh who was a judge in Guyana when APNU filed a case after the 1997 elections that we had illegally used the ID card for voting in the 1997 elections. Now, what happened? The reality is that before the elections, the two political parties, main parties in Guyana, PPP and PNC, agreed in Parliament that people will use the ID card to vote. We jointly passed a law. People voted on both sides in favor of the law that ID cards must be used. They lost the elections, and then APNU challenged the constitutionality of the election based on the use of the ID card. That is how you can trust the PNC. And so what happened? They went to court, and it was Claudette Singh who gave a ruling against the PPP and shortened our term by 2 years in office. We had a 3-year term. She shortened the term. We lost 2 years of our term from the 97 period. So Claudette Singh wasn't a PPP stooge then, or a poodle. And for Amanza Walton saying that she votes with the PPP practically on all the issues. It's not true, but even if that was so, because this is a respected judge, it says something about them. They're on the wrong side of most of the issues, because they were trying to help the three commissioners, and unfortunately, the COI didn't touch on the role of the commissioners. But they were part of the process, I believe. The three representatives of the opposition on the commission were part of that process that led to the attempt to rig elections. Well, remember the drafting of that. Alexander wanted not to use a normal process for the recount, but to put a whole heap of complications so that they would have reason to look at this. By the way, I got complaint, anyhow, let me don't go with that, from Bartica about the money that they got in iPad-AG. Again, a person stood up, a Afro-Guyanese person just stood up in Bartica and said, we should do something about them. They didn't get any help from this organization. But let me come back to the core point. The core point is that her statement is revealing, because if you're on the wrong side of issues most times, and they have been on the wrong side of most issues, and they have been proven not by the PPP on trying to not holding the elections after the no confidence motion. Within 3 months of the passage of the no confidence motion, they ended up holding it 15 months after, and only after the CCJ, not a PPP court or the local courts, the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled that they were in breach of the Constitution. The Caribbean Court of Justice ruled that Patterson's unilateral appointment to GCOM as the chairman was in breach of the Constitution again. It was the same Patterson who gave them the decision to illegally remove people's name from the voters list. They were on the wrong side, so on the constitutional. They tried to remove people's name from the voters list through a no-house-to-house registration, and the courts ruled, it was the Chief Justice, Roxanne George, who ruled that it was illegal and unconstitutional to do so again. They were on the wrong side there. They tried to push through the results of the election. Several times we went to the CCJ. The CCJ forced Lowenfield basically to reject, to remove his declaration, which showed APNU won the elections, and to use a declaration that was in keeping with the recount. He refused to do so 4 times until the commission forced him to. And the 3 opposition commissioners were not supportive of this. Claudette Singh had to basically vote in favor with the government commissioners to enforce the decision of the Caribbean Court of Justice. They would not support it. On almost every single issue, they've been on the wrong side. So what do you expect Claudette Singh to do? To vote with your commissioners in an attempt to steal elections? And when she doesn't support their plans, then it becomes a problem. Since when the frequency of the vote matters when and not the issues. So we've seen this over and over again. And this assault on Claudette Singh, because as I pointed out, when has APNU ever, if you go back for students of history, you go back and check in our entire electoral history, there have never been an election when before the election they don't complain about fraud. They don't complain about it because they always set the ground to lie to their supporters they've lost because of fraud. And it's happening once again. But Amanda Walton said that about the list. And now, a person like that, who is a lawyer, just would give lawyers a bad name. Now to say, she said that sometime in the past that Jagdeo has said we need to clean up the list. So when I speak contextually. You have to look at the context that I was speaking about. The context is that clear off the dead names from the voters list. We're still in favor of that. And GCOM has the power to do so. We've suggested how they can do so. Get all of the names come from the GRO over to GCOM, publish the names in the newspapers for the entire country, people who are deceased, send the copies of the dead names to all the political parties that they can verify that. Once it's verified, there's no objection, you remove all the names. So everyone who is dead is off the voters list. We're in favor of that. But we can't be in favor of an unconstitutional act. And she knows that this matter was tested in the court. And the Chief Justice already pointed out, you can't do what APNU want. It would be unconstitutional. And the reasons are that one, prior to the new constitution that we all supported, APNU and PPP, and that I signed into law as a new constitution of Guyana. In the old constitution, there were 3 requirements to vote. One, that you had to be 18 years and above. 2, that you had to be a resident of Guyana. Right, resident in Guyana, you had a residency requirement, and 3, a citizen of Guyana. In the last constitution change, we removed the residency criteria in the Constitution of Guyana. So even if you reside abroad, we can now remove your name from the voters list. Once you fulfill the 2 constitutional requirements, you're 18 years and above, and you're Guyanese citizen. If you reside abroad, we cannot remove your name from the voters list, as happens across the Caribbean. That is why their voters list, you see large numbers of people on the voters list. In Guyana's case too, the last elections, we had about 660,000 people on the voters list. only about 460 voted. Only about 460. But you can't remove, you can remove the dead ones, but not those who go abroad. They can come back anytime and vote. That is what was agreed to in the constitutional change that they all supported. The Chief Justice ruled on it. For a lawyer like Amanza not knowing that, it's unbelievable. She knows that what they're proposing would be unconstitutional and illegal, or she doesn't know. Either way, it is a problem. And so they keep stirring it up because they're hoping that more people, somehow in the wash, people may start believing some of this. But when you dive down into the reality of things, the constitutionality of it, then you will see that this is, again, nonsense. So these are some of the key things that we have had to deal with in the past, the attempts to mislead people that were done in the past week or so. We remain focused on what is happening in the country. I'm not going to speak again. The same Amanza Walton said that they have to undo 23 years of PPP rule. And I don't know which world she lives in, because if she's talking about 1992, I don't know where she is from, which part of the country. But if you tell me, I can tell you what the state of the country was in at that time, what the state of the finances of the country and the economy of the country and the social well-being of our people have been. And it was a far cry from 2015. We were considered a hippie country. We were declared ineligible to borrow from the multilateral institutions, bankrupt, basically, couldn't pay our debts. We had massive amounts. If you look at the Rampacard study that was done for CIMAP in the 1990, when you look at the income level, over 80% of our people were considered below the poverty line in that period. We had 3 weeks blackout in the city at that time. The roads in the city, much less the other years, were impassable. You couldn't drive through the city. Totally different situation than we have today. By 2015, we had a solvent country. We had removed most of the debt. We had one of the fastest growing economies. Our output in almost every sector had tripled, quadrupled. We had cut the fiscal deficit from 25% of GDP down to less than 10% of GDP. We had balance of payments surpluses. The central bank had reserves now, unlike in the 90s. They didn't have foreign currency reserves. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of reserves. Our exchange rate had remained stable. We had single-digit inflation in most of the year, in the 23 years, unlike in the period under APNU. That was the transformation. And she wants to, we had democracy in the period, and she's saying they had a hard time in undoing what the PPP did. They undid a lot of other things. They undid the 10,000 grant from the school kids. They undid the free water for pensioners. They undid the 1 month tax-free bonus for the joint services. They undid the tax-free policy that we had for the hinterland communities like Mabaruma and all of that. They undid a lot of those. They undid the jobs of 1,972 Amerindian CSOs. They undid the job of 7,000 sugar workers. They did a lot of undoing, but it wasn't the undoing that did the negatives. And they undid the Integrity Commission for 3 years, where for the first time in 20-something years, they didn't have to submit their statements of income and asset. They did. I can go down a long list of what the undoing that they did. And they did quite a few things too. They took the grants, the SLED grants, and for themselves. They took some large tracts of land for themselves. I can point that out. They took their insurance, special insurance to the ministers and their families, health insurance for themselves. They took a 50 to 100% salary increase for themselves in a few weeks after coming into office. They did a lot of things too in the 5 years. So I don't know what she's talking about. What she's talking about. So it's important. Sometimes we have to belabor this and go over it again and again and again. But I'm not going to let them get away with the lies that they told. They told a lot of lies about us and basically scared Afro-Guyanese away from this party too, that we're racist. We're fighting that every single day and at every single quarter. And the moment people come in and start working with us, they see the difference. They feel part of the family. They told a lot of lies about that. They told a lot of lies about elections in this country to their supporters when they were the primary forces and they remain the primary force for rigging elections. They tell a lot of lies about their achievements when they have a history of non-achievement on the economic front. So we cannot let up, and that bothers them. That's why Norton doesn't want me to speak here. He complains about me speaking too much. He speaks 3 times a week on the media, and I'm talking too much. Well, I will continue this. So that's the reason. Even if we have to go over it many, many times until the people of this country see who's working in their interests and they can judge on the competency of the two parties and the governments that they form. So I'm going to end there. The lies continue. Look at this one here. Bench Cup, I think, runs this social media site. And by the way, I saw, he said, yesterday PPP activists went to Diamond Special Needs School and filled out proxy forms for children 18 and over without their parents or guardians. So the children are 18 and over without their parents and guardians. This is the incompetence of these people. If you're over 18, you don't need your parent or guardian to fill out any form. And we gave them $1,000. So we are looking for proxy votes in Diamond. But in Diamond, we won the area already. Only one constituency is being contested by one individual, not APNU. We practically won the elections in Diamond already, almost. Well, we won the NDC, because even if that one constituency is won by someone else, and we don't think that, all the other seats will go to the PPP. And they said we are looking for proxies in Diamond of voting. This is the lie that they're told. I see Rickford Burke is back at his old game. His funds must be running low about extortion. So he put some other businessman would get caught in the US or something like that. Another businessman will be caught in the US and he may be able to help them, could talk to his friends there and stuff. The businessman must expect a call. Now, I don't know whether that's true. You can say any of those things. But I want to urge the businessmen, if they receive a call from him about helping in the US and collecting a little thing on the side, just let us know or call the police, because it's called extortion. It's called extortion. He has been extorting people. That's his side business. The other side business has been rhetoric for APNU, collecting money, fighting for the cause in Guyana, but living off the money he collects. So they roll out all of these people to continue from time to time. That's all I'm going to say today. The floor is open for questions. Yes, please.
Visit to Japan, and what are some of the issues, the challenges, and the outcome? Has the party launched, or is there an official launch of the government election campaign? And thirdly, based on the opposition press conference this morning, they spoke about the motion that was tabled by the opposition that was defeated, and they spoke at length about there will be no confidence in the spirit. They plan to pass no confidence motions. How do you respond to that? And
yeah, so Region 1, no confidence motion, official launch. Okay. So we have had, as General Secretary of the party, I've gone to many areas. We continue going to the areas to talk to the key activists. And you've probably seen some of that in the social media about campaigning. A lot of these campaigns, we're not going to do big glitzy launches. People have started working. And our instruction is that carry the message to every single home. We've already in the tongues, if you look at the promises and you get the flyers there because they're public documents for different tongues and you will see what the promises are in different areas around the country. And we're still working in other areas to make sure that the flyers reflect what could be funded. The last thing we want is a group that is campaigning in the local government on behalf of the PPP go and make wild suggestions or promises to people that we can't deliver. So that is why we're watching the messaging carefully. So in the tongues and stuff, we have one promise that we've made though that would cut across many of these large areas where there's a lack of transparency. That we are saying if we win, say in the city or New Amsterdam or Linden and many of the other areas, we are going to live stream the council meetings. We want the country to see the council meetings being live streamed. It's public already, but many people don't really get to go. They don't have no interest in going. So you will see whether the councillors are debating issues or discussing issues that are germane to your own development and in the local government area that you live. But I will urge the media to get hold of these flyers because you will see what the promises are in these areas. A lot of the promises about roads and drainage and all of that and public buildings and youth facilities and youth training programs and stuff in the cities and different parts of the country are being made, and those could be funded. So we're not going to do like a big rally to launch all of this. Like APNU called their thing a rally, and it was a damn squid basically in the city. So people are working already. I said before nomination day that we're hitting the ground from nomination day. Once the candidates are known and their names submitted, they've been on the ground walking. And our instruction is go to every home. We have a message, even the home is hardcore APNU. We want to go and talk to people. We want them to see what we're about. We want them to hear our message. Brave the remarks and all of that. Of course, if people are physically abusive and that's a different matter. We're not going to tolerate that. But, you know, we take a bit of cussing sometimes, and that's all right. We're accustomed to that, but we are taking our message to everyone, regardless of who you support or who you supported in the past. And so that's what we're doing. It's happening already across the country, and now they're fortified by these flyers that they're taking to the communities. And we've been doing that in a low-key way. The Region 1, what are some of the issues? So a lot of people, so jobs have always been an issue in the outlying areas. And so we are now, that's why we're rolling part-time job opportunities. What we did on the coast, we're taking some of that to the hinterland too. Business development, generally help for agriculture. We spoke extensively about agriculture. Take, for example, the changing fortunes of Region 1. Now, the biggest problem for the agricultural sector in Region 1 had always been transportation to move the goods to Georgetown. So we have, with the new ferry now and the reconfiguration of the wharf in Mabruma and Port Kaituma, the new ferry could cut the travel time by 50%. In that ferry, we'll have 250 seats that are air conditioned in an air conditioned cabin. You know how the trip was arduous for people with children and everything. They have Wi-Fi on the boat. You can move 15 vehicles, cars or 4 trucks on the boat now. They have 10 by 10 containers, so people who bring their goods used to complain about pilfering. They leave it on the open wharf. They can rent a container and lock the goods and stuff like that. So a lot of that will help to take more goods into the interior, push down the cost of living, but also allow them to bring out more stuff. Secondly, if they grow the ground provision and all of that, to bring it from northwest to the coast. But we have farmers up the highway who are growing, say, Edos much cheaper. It's easy for them to get into the market. If you have to bring Edos from northwest or something like that, you can't be competitive. So we're trying to open up some markets directly into the Caribbean, where they can then ship directly into the Caribbean from the northwest for the farmers there. We're looking to boost production. I asked, why aren't we doing more plantains? I know it can help with food security, but the vast areas, not just the bitter cassava. And they said the sucker is too expensive. So we're sending in people to work at that. The Minister of Agriculture will lead a team into Matthews Ridge, into Port Kaituma and Bartica in June to look at this. We did 4,500 breeding animals, pigs. I met with some families on the highway. They're doing pigs. In these areas, we can do a lot of the pigs, so the help can go in kind. I told you about the tissue culture thing from India that would allow us to do 4 million plants per year. We're bringing in a group from Brazil to do the citrus because they need planting material. So a lot of that help, that kind of help, and people are talking a lot about agriculture and training. So Minister Hamilton has to lead another group into Matthews Ridge to train people. They have some mining jobs there. People need to be trained in operating heavy equipment, excavators. And I said, the women can do this too. We don't want it to be just a job for men. We have many places where women are becoming welders and all of that. It's not gender specific. So a lot of that sort of issue was raised about additional help. But people are excited. They want to do things for themselves. Then the small business grant, we've converted that sled from 145 million given to one MP to share out, or another MP getting 5 million for his barber chair, right? We said no PPP MP will get any of these grants. We reduce the size and we give it to more people now. Large numbers of people are getting their grant. And so that is the sort of this business help that we'll do. So that sort of thing came out of the visit. Wi-Fi is important. A lot of the hinterland students can't connect to the Gold program because they don't have good Wi-Fi. It's expensive, they told me, with digital. And by the way, the service, GT&T service, is non-existent, atrocious. I have one phone. I had to borrow a hotspot from someone in Bartica, in Port Mabaruma, Matthews Ridge, and Port Kaituma. My phone didn't work at all. It's atrocious for a company that has been here so long. But coming back to the core point, I had to say that today because it's ridiculous. So we have to get proper bandwidth, even in one center, so those kids too can use the Gold program and benefit from that. I've promised Professor, we have had about 300 applications came in February from Bartica and those areas for the Gold Scholarship Program. I'm asking Professor Opadair to lead the team to go there and see that those kids too can join the Gold program. So those are some of the things that came out of the hinterland, and I expect they will be the same almost everywhere we go about job opportunities and stuff. So Mahi Paul um, is he he filed this motion, and now he wants a no confidence motion against the speaker. He talked about that today. Mahi Paul is waiting to file after these local government elections. He and a group of people, a no confidence motion in Norton. He was part of it. You recall the conversation with him and Roysdale Ford, trying to urge the guy from the treasurer who was signing these blank checks for Norton to urge him to make us think about it. So Mahi Paul should really concentrate on that no confidence motion. Probably have greater chance of succeeding there than against the speaker. And the reason is that this bullyism and the craving for attention on non-issues. So as I said, this is a form of prostitution, not of people, but the idea that the civil society stirs up something, oh, we shouldn't have appealed the ruling. And suddenly they see maybe, oh, it's in the newspapers every day. How do we weigh in and get some mileage from this? He files a no confidence motion. So he files a motion to be issued, to be debated as an emergence issue, urgent, national interest and all of that. There is a court ruling that gives the people 30 days. So that's one. There is no urgency. Even the court has established a timeline. It's not like an urgent matter of national importance. But even if it were, there is a ruling in the parliament, and there have been several rulings by Trotman and this current speaker, that once an issue is sub judice, you don't allow it to be debated in the parliament. And the appeal was filed long before he filed his motion for debate. So the matter is sub judice. You can't. You would prejudice the outcome if we debate it. And he knows this, but he is grandstanding. But this is not only clownish behavior, because it makes us look like incompetent and stupid that a legislator will not know this. But it's just like the worst form of prostitution and seeking interest. I'm mentioning that word because that's how I can't find anything else. And they still need to apologize for the Norton saying specifically to Barbara Pilgrim about prostituting herself. Because that was in relation to a person. It's not an indirect thing. The conduct, it's a person. Okay, but not just plantain deer, right? So what happens is a question of food security. When I met with some Tushaus from Region 9, they have issues of flooding. All the bitter cassava might flood out. We don't have planting material. We had to bring in truckloads of planting material from Brazil to share back because it's flooding. So when there is a flood in the areas, particularly in the farmlands which are away from the villages, then the livelihood of people, their ability to feed their families get affected because those are subsistence economies. So my suggestion is, why not, in most of the communities, even where the homes are on highlands, like in Region 1, 2, like higher areas that are not flooded so much. People can plant in their yard because they have lots. Like if they plant that, then at least you can have it for food security purposes. Secondly, we may be able to do it on plantation scale. So moving it to the Caribbean could be one option, but processing it right into the region, into a whole range of like flour made from plantain or a whole range of stuff, we are prepared to build the factory shell and have the people run it and put in the solar panels so they would get power. So if they have the production there. So now we have to go and work with them to see how we can grow this sector, both for food security, but also on a plantation scale, because those regions would be mainly agricultural regions. The suckers. This is that, yes, definitely, definitely. That is what the help now will come in the form of planting material and other range of things. Just planting material. So we help them to get all of these, then they don't have to buy the suckers. And then we can do it on plantation scale. But that's the objective, working with them. And then we already have a program, even since I was president, we started off, because of the erratic transportation. We said, what can we do in the hinterland that would not be dependent on regular transportation? So we said, if you grow regular stuff and they're perishable, you have a narrow window in which to get the goods out. But what if we do turmeric or black pepper or ginger or honey? These things don't have a shelf life. It's a long shelf life that they have. So you can keep it for longer periods. So we are working now. That is why the president mentioned it about the ginger and the turmeric, and all could be grown in that region and come. We have huge demand and honey and stuff, and come to Georgetown. Huge, huge demand for those products here. I met the night I went to that show, the Indian show, and I met a guy there. He showed me a whole range on the East Coast of products that he produces now processing. And a lot of Guyanese are doing that. I'm really proud that they are into manufacturing. A lot of the things that were imported, the condiments and stuff, are now being done by our own people right here, and very high quality and very competitive with foreign imports, including the quality of the packaging, which had always been a problem with our local people. But they're rising to the challenge now in many areas. All right, let me come back. I'll come back. On, it's around the same issue or different issues? All right, well then continue.
You said that the APNU's, about APNU's campaign to the vendors. What I want to know is, going into these local government elections, what is the PPPC's position on where vending is going this year?
So we made it clear in some of the most developed capitals in the world, developed country, they have street vending. The street vending here has to be done under better conditions. We need massive investments in our markets to improve the way not just the way our markets improve. We have to improve management generally, and that's being promised, but also the facilities. You go into markets, there are potholes, all sorts of things. There has to be major investments in the markets that we'll promise. You can't give the money to this city council, town council here, because they will spend it on everything else except the markets and improving the conditions. These are important for vendors in the market as well as the patrons, people who go there. Then you have vending along the roadside, etc. Some of the vending is done by people who own the stores. They have an arrangement with the vendors in front of them. Some not. People have to, they will continue to vend there on the streets, but it has to be done under different conditions. You can't block people's entrance, store entrance, and two, the conditions there have to improve. The place have to be kept clear. We have a situation, like personally I looked at it, and I think I mentioned it, where the edges of the road between where the asphaltic concrete ends to the trench, the drain, it's always muddy, or in a, we probably have to pave all the way to the edge or put in the pavers so you can still have a soak through. So we do that kind of thing there. The place looks different. And you have to, and the vendors need to understand that. They would be allowed to continue earning a living, an honest living, but your conditions have to improve for vending. That's our position. Always has been the position. We have never had an extreme, because we've been lobbied from both sides on controlled vending or shutting down vending totally by some store owners. Our position has never been on the extreme. We've been in the middle. We have to find that. Yes, this young lady, and then I come to.
I have two questions. You were circulating on social media with MP Ferguson, aggressively engaging members of the PPC. How have instances like this affected the PPC's efforts to engage persons across the country? And secondly, outside of LGBT, could you provide an update on the engagement with the State Department Assistant Secretary?
So, the beginning, what did you say? I heard something like Ferguson? Yeah, please, yes. Yes, right. Somebody said something. Oh, okay. I think I saw that video, yeah. But how? Oh. Yeah, I think there are two sets of people who are coming to us. People still are worried, especially if they live in APNU strongholds, because like what happened after they signed the backers forms, people would go to their homes and try to intimidate that. And many are not cut out for the cut and trust of politics. They don't want to get into this, their names mentioned and all of that. They just want to live productive lives. So those people are a bit concerned. But I think they're resolved to support and to change their own lives. And they have made a decision mentally that they can work with this party and their lives would be better off than supporting APNU. But this kind of behavior can potentially affect them. I don't think it will change their quiet resolve, but it may change them being more vocal about their support. And then there's another set of people who are traditionally supported APNU, who don't care about that. That will not affect them. They're strong, they're robust, and you see many of them. A Barbara Pilgrim would not be intimidated by that. By somebody. I saw a man cussing them on the road too. They sent me a video because she's a robust campaigner, and so she can defend herself, but not against this Norton's nastiness. We need to do that. Defend her, and the country should do that. Our choices. But that group of people will not be intimidated by this madness by Annette Ferguson. People hardly pay any attention to her, frankly speaking. And she has a streak of the unusual. I don't want to call it anything else. She has a streak of the unusual that sometimes you're very hard to understand what she's getting at. But I think a lot of the reaction is out of the fear, and they see already. She complained that Norton rigged the elections. She was complaining about the rigging in her party, you recall. That was just about a year ago. So they are very confused. They see a party that's dwindling in its support and has no future, and they're lashing out at every single person that they see, and especially people who are campaigning. Though the young guys I saw her cussing out down there, she doesn't know about their history. I know those people because they work in 2018 and 2020, and some of them were working then, going to every home, trying to fight off. When APNU was trying to harass the minibus drivers, one of those guys brought the drivers to see me. We tried to fight them off. When people were vendors were getting a hard time. Those people were representing vendors and stuff. So she doesn't know about them. She just saw a few people in red t-shirt campaigning. But she felt maybe because they were Afro-Guyanese, some of them, that they shouldn't be with the PPP. It's a racist form of abuse. So they can't stop the wave because people have had a chance to compare. They can't stop what's happening, the crossover. It will only gain momentum in the future. I said already, I acknowledge it would be tough to win Georgetown or New Amsterdam or Linden, but that doesn't prevent a party like ours from going and working every home to see that. But they have a rough time. Yes, you have another question?
Yeah, Dr. Jagdeo, with
All right, I'll
regards
come back to you.
the local government election, we know Georgetown, particularly Amsterdam and Linden, are traditionally strong Afro areas. Is your party confident of winning any of these terms? And if so, which of the terms do you think you're confident of winning? And secondly, looking at the overall election, what percentage of seats overall do you think your party is going to win from the local government election?
Well, I was asked on nomination day about predictions. And I said, as General Secretary of a party, I try not to predict outcomes. I know, and internally I brief people about what we want. But I think a party should be humble and work towards people's vote. Don't have this preconceived notion, oh, because we're here, we'd win, and all of that. So we're not only going to campaign in APNU strongholds, we're campaigning hard in PPP strongholds too, because we want people to turn out. And these are areas where we are almost assured of, we are confident of a victory. But we believe in working towards people's support, and parties should do that. So I am not one for much prediction. I've acknowledged that it is harder to win. I just did that again. In these areas, there are strongholds. But when you're a party and you have to campaign and reassure yourself that you will win in your own stronghold, then you're in trouble. And therefore, I don't know what the final outcome would be. I hope for the sake of these the towns and these areas that we have a PPP for once since independence. We have a PPP council, so we can be given a chance to show what we can do in these areas. The same transformation you see in the country, we can do for these local government areas. So I'm going to remain with that outlook as General Secretary of the party. Our activists are told to give their best shot, work the hardest. Let's leave the outcome to the voters. Let's leave the outcome to the voters.
And overall, the overall percentage of seats
Again, we have won already a significant amount, nearly 300 constituency seats already of the 610. And so again, I don't want to sound too arrogant about that, but we've already won a significant part. We win. Anyhow, don't go. A significant majority in these local government elections. Of the local government areas, as well as the seats contested, we'll win a significant majority. Yes, please. Yes, we had a good discussion, a long discussion yesterday about several issues, including the energy sector and our commitment to net zero and the support from the US government and the partnership moving forward. So both sides expressed the desire to forge a strong, lasting, long-term partnership in the issue of energy, the energy transition, and fulfilling our global commitments on climate change. So that I'm trying to shorten, but we discuss key elements of that, how we can achieve all of these goals together in partnership, working with each other. So I assured the State Department that people here, investors here, US and investors from any country in the world, China, India, etc., will be given a fair opportunity. We're looking for investments in this country in every sector that will bring benefit to our country and that will transform what are just opportunities into realizable projects. But at the same time, the investors, whilst they come here and can make a good return on their investments, that the people of this country, our people, have to significantly benefit from these investments. That's balance. We reiterated that every incentive regime, the framework for operating the oil and gas sector, will try to maintain that balance, but progressively more and more of the benefits, particularly in the oil and gas sector, will have to come to our people. And so we spoke about that. Again, with the specific projects, I talk about the movement on the solar, the gas to energy project. We spoke about our relationship with Exim Bank, etc., a growing strong relationship with Exim Bank. And don't listen, Rickford Burke had a comment, but he can't blackmail the Exim Bank too. I saw you were speaking about the Exim Bank. Can't extort the people there. They would lock him up. And he wouldn't come to Guyana because he'd get locked up here too. He's wanted for extortion in Guyana. So we didn't speak about Rickford Burke though. I'm just talking about the Exim Bank generally. So really good conversations on the State Department. Yes. The IPADG issue and what? Oh, the Bartica. Oh, okay. So the IPADG issue, I don't think we've seen much movement because since the last time, our commitment is to give, we budgeted the money, but our commitment is to give that money directly to the organizations, not through IPADG. So I don't know if Nigel Hughes was abroad at some conference talking about that. They run off into the night abroad to muddy the waters for the country, but they wouldn't do it here because here we robustly take them on and expose them. So they run off there to lie about the country and our lack of commitment. We have budgeted the money in this year budget, $100 million for that, and it will be given. So directly to the organization, that's still our position. I heard somewhere, I don't know if it's true, that Roxanne Myers had become the new Chief Executive Officer. It could be a rumor for the IPADG, but you should check that out if it's true. If it's true, that's very, very worrying. And it demonstrates clearly a trend. So on the other thing with Bartica that came up there were lots of, again, I met with the business community too, and I talked to them about organizing themselves, the same sort of help that we will accord to the other regions, Region 1 and the different places in Region 1 that I visited, that we can do the same in Bartica. We spoke about the Gold Scholarship Program. I spoke extensively because remember Granger had said Bartica will be a green town, and in his, the Green State Strategy. So I pointed out how we have taken a strategy that was developed by paying consultants from the LCDS money that we left that they had opposed. They developed a strategy that was a liability to the country. because they had no specific project. It was just a statement of desire. And then everything there had to be funded from the treasury. And I said, contrast that with us getting back into office, and in 2 years thereafter, we've launched an expanded LCDS. We got our credits internationally certified. We sold $700 million of the credit, 30% of the credit for a minimum of $700 million, because if it goes up, the prices go up in secondary markets, we will share the benefit. So we can earn about $2.5 billion US dollars, nearly 500 billion Guyana dollars from a strategy that would have been a liability had we gone their route. That the Amerindian communities have already received their share of the money for this year. Some have never gotten that large allocation, ranging from 15 million to about 36 million depending on the size of the villages. Then the next year they would get another allocation. They haven't even touched the money as yet. So I was pointing out that what they mention about Bartica being a green tongue and planting a couple of palm trees there can't be an economic strategy. And that's the difference between us. That's a big difference. Norton will never speak about something as complex as that. How the PPP, in just 2.5 years, have taken a dead approach, totally a useless strategy, and converted it into a potential earning of 2.5 billion US dollars for the people of this country. That will be spent back. And Marcel has asked about the types of projects, and I told her we'll identify what they are before the money is released to those projects. So those kinds of things came up at the Bartica meeting. I didn't have a large amount of time because I had to fly back to get to this press conference. So it was raining too, and so I rushed back to get here to the press conference. I didn't want to miss my friend Norton listening to me today.
Dr. Jagdeo, recently Reporters Without Borders did an article. The header states, Guyana's government should ensure that journalists are able to do their jobs free from harassment. It continues, Reporters Without Borders condemn the harassment and intimidation of journalists in Guyana through online targeting and disrespect from the administration. It further calls on the Guyanese government to reform its practices to give proper access to public information. Members of the press should be respected and free from scare tactics in their jobs, especially in a signatory country of media freedom. Now, this is as a direct result of a statement issued by the Guyana Press Association, obviously misleading. Members of the press went to a press conference that the president held. A private citizen who got frustrated with their line of questioning to the president's open press conference that members of the press went to and members of the public went to. This was a deliberate attempt to create confusion and lies. Now, this international organization ran with this story as a result of how they see the Guyana Press Association, of which the Guyana Press Association is not. It is not an upstanding organization. It has not had an election. It is not an organization that is without controversy. What is the administration doing? Since only the administration has the power to reach where the Guyana Press Association is reaching internationally, what is it doing?
The last time, I think it was last week that you asked me the question, and I was blunt about it, and I called names, and I saw an editorial in the Starbuck News that said that I like to take over people's portfolio. that Jagdeo is a typical man. He goes into everybody's portfolio, and we should leave it to the respective ministers. So Kwame McCoy should have been answering this question. That is what the Stabroek News implied. Well, let me just say something. I can understand that feeling, but we don't, this government is not compartmentalized. And then as General Secretary, which I'm hosting this press conference as, I believe I'm unfettered to answer anything as General Secretary that will taint the government that this party supports. So I don't have in the Freedom House here, and as General Secretary, we don't have the compartmentalization too. But more at the government level, the same thing. I expect if Priya Manikchand sees the government of Guyana being criticized in the oil and gas sector, and she sits in the cabinet, and she has answers, and a question goes to her at the press conference, she should defend this sector too. And so any part, when our foreign minister goes abroad, he can't say to the people, if they ask him about something, oh, I'll send another minister abroad to talk about this. He has to speak on anything to deal with any part of the government. He represents us abroad. So I'm not going to be straitjacketed into that characterization, but of course the editorial is free to say what it wishes. Now, I made it clear last week that we will defend media freedom, and we have always stood on that side. I saw some pathetic attempt. I saw Dennis posting a couple of things about comparing media freedom on the two governments, and it's not telling a whole picture. And I think it's a form of campaigning that's going on now that we want to stay far away from. We want to stay far away from. But let me say, when last week I defended this and I said that it was the GPA, and I think the editorial was saying it may not be just the GPA that caused the ranking to drop steeply, because I was saying it was conveniently timed. But the reason I concluded this, that it had a direct relationship to what the GPA has said, is because of what the group quoted. I have a duty to defend our president, not just because he's a member of this party, but he's the head of state. And when the international community, an organization like this that is controlled, the Reporters Without Borders, would say this of our head of state, this goes around the world. This goes around the world, that whether directly attacking the media, or encouraging supporters to do so with a wink and a nod, President Ali is putting journalists at risk for simply doing their jobs. This is reprehensible. When has Irfan Ali ever directly attacked the media or put people's, encouraged supporters to attack the media in this country? But that is around the world. President Ali's administration must take action to ensure all journalists are safe to do their jobs. This includes holding to account party supporters who intimidate members of the press. This has gone around the world. This is how Guyana is seen now, that we have a president in this country with a wink and a nod urges people to attack media people or directly attacks them. And this came directly out of the GPA, the Press Association here. This is directly from them. But now the whole world believes we have a president who does that when it's far from the truth. Don't we have a right as a party, as a government, to defend this? This is how the world will see us now. And that was one of the main reasons why our ranking dropped, directly attributed to the GPA. And knowing what they say about us, it's been totally hostile to the government of Ghana. So that is why I want to say to the Starbuck News too, we have a duty, and the people who wrote that editorial, that we had a duty, and that is why we said it was linked to the ranking. This statement that came out here, it's the same thing. I saw a couple of cartoons, oh, we a little thin-skinned about the TIGI report. I brought it, I printed it out today, because this media in this country, and I know, let me say, don't say nothing bad about it. It's the greatest media in the world, right? So I brought the report, and I'm going to give it to you, because if you don't print it. But what the current government is doing, this is the TIGI report. It had went up to Transparency International in 2019. And it says, it lists all the things that the PNC APNU was doing. Making petroleum contracts publicly available. You recall the struggle to get the contracts. Well, not on the website. Dismissing employees found guilty of corruption. I don't know how many employees got dismissed there. Halting a major contract for parking meters in the capital city, which violated the procurement laws following protests by citizens. This is, Vulcan approved this. Re-establishing the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission became defunct under APNU when this report was sent in. Updating the Code of Conduct for public officials. I don't know where this Code of Conduct was and whether Cathy Yu saw that Code of Conduct or the other ministers, because she was getting contracts that in her company that she owned, she was signing checks for actively on behalf of the company, was getting contracts in her own ministry. There are several ministers whose spouses were getting contracts in their ministries. I didn't know about that Code of Conduct, but this was the thing. Establishing a state asset recovery agency. They did, and so Clive Thomas was working there. I'm going to say it was a graveyard for the fossils. A graveyard for the fossils, not to find nothing. And Elson Lowe was there too, the economist now. So that was it. Now, you go down the list. This was sent by the local group here to Transparency International in 2019. A bunch of lies, fabrication. As a result of this, we saw an improvement in our standing. So when the people find out that a lot of these things are not true, and when we start exposing that all of the corruption that took place in the 5 years, our ranking must come back down, because now they're saying, oh, MPs were getting all of this money in the last audit that was done through the ministry, the SLED audit. A minister was charged for selling an asset that's worth 30 million US dollars for 100,000 US dollars. That's the sort of thing. So where would we go? And when it rose based on this ranking, based on this report, they got a massive boost now internationally. Suddenly it will slide down back. These reports matter. And we didn't publish this. Guess who published it? Transparency International published this as the local report. We didn't see it before. It's only recently it was published. So now we see the inner workings. Don't you have to wouldn't you have as media? I hope Starbuck News will follow up on this. Call the people from TI and ask them, did you see this report? All the leaders. Was it discussed internally? Did you make it public locally before you sent it up? Why was it so factually inaccurate? Where are those questions going to these bodies? But we get criticized because we expose it. oh, we are intolerant to the TI because of something else. And that is why I printed it out. I'm going to give it to the media here today. I'll point you where you can get it. I hope that the questions would be asked of Transparency International, because this is how they operate. They're politically aligned. Politically aligned. If you see the individuals there, they operate as transparent organizations, but they don't have an element. Their own operations are not transparent. And you have seen it now. Recently, I see major calls for a list here now in the GPA elections. So that's what I need to say on this press, the report that came out there.
Dr. Jagdeo, why I asked specifically about what the government plans to do with the Ghana Press Association is because...
Oh, what we will do about the Press Association?
Yes, they sell themselves specifically a premier organization, deciding who is a journalist and who is not. They exclude people from being a part of this organization, and then are the only extension internationally for journalists from Guyana.
Yeah.
Requests, an election is coming up, requests are being made to find out how transparent they are. The same people who come and ask government about transparency themselves are not transparent. Then one has to wonder if the government could cause more damage to the people, or the press, who's supposed to be keeping the government accountable and transparent.
Okay. So since last week, I've learned quite a bit more that should be of concern to every citizen of this country and every journalist. And people, a lot of journalists call me and they express concerns after they saw what I said here. But they're scared of speaking out, because somehow they feel if they speak out, they'll be abused by a few individuals who act like APNU, bully people. So, one, what did I find out from last week to now? I saw a very interesting post from Ruel Johnson. So I did not realize that these elections, when a particular individual came here and asked me about the election and said it's delayed, I did not realize that the Guyana Press Association elections were scheduled for 2020. We're in 2023 and they have not been held. So can you imagine, almost 2.5 terms later? Let me put this in terms of the national level. You had an election in say the year 2000. Elections are scheduled for 2005 because you have a 5-year term. But we don't hold elections till 2013. And that is what has happened at the national level. And so the one party remains in power from 2000 to 2013 without holding elections. So the elections were held in 2018. You have an incumbent there, should have been held in 2020, and were never held. So I then saw another fact, that these elections were postponed before COVID. But the 2 years term expired even before the country was shut down because of COVID, the first term in office. So elections should have been held even before they shut down for COVID. Now, nowhere in the world would any organization that has had a delay that is 1.5 times the original term of your tenure in office would have any credibility. Now, so those are two things that I found out. Now I'm hearing that the elections are scheduled for this week and there is no list as yet. Now, this is not a voters list for the country with 660,000 people. I don't know, it probably have a maximum of, I don't know how many journalists we have, but if we have all of them, I don't think it would reach 500. So it should be easy to share with all the contesting parties a voters list. But that's not available, and I heard it being said it would be available just before you vote. So people can verify. They had this policy in the past, I heard, where up to the day of voting in the past, that people were allowed to bring themselves in order. So you can even, when the meeting is held for the voting, they would be allowed to pay up their dues if they're delinquent, etc. So now there is a cutoff period. They've cut off before, you can't now join. And the list is not available. This looks to me, and as a person who have seen rigged voters lists, as though there's intense rigging here, because nobody wants to make the list available and give explanation. Should have been a simple thing. The list should have been available a long time ago. So I don't know what's, and then anybody else, and there's a campaign now, or if you vote for anyone else, so you have to vote for this to be independent, you have to vote for a particular individual or particular slate, because the PPP boogeyman is always there. Or you vote for anybody, this place would be controlled by the PPP. So it's typical, it looks almost like an APNU spearheaded operation, frankly speaking, here. But knowing some individuals, I wouldn't doubt that a heavy hand is being played in this. So I'm not going to mention individuals or so, but anywhere in the world, nobody would allow this to happen, particularly the same journalists, the members of this organization who argue for transparency in government and everywhere else, and who fought for a clean voters list and non-rigging there. Any self-respecting person, but more so the journalists. More so the journalists who are committed to fairness, etc., would ever allow this, and without speaking out, not be coward. It's like you can speak out and write about governments when they make transgression, and that's it, that's okay. But you're prepared to accept this because somehow of some sense of loyalty. And it's a very troubling thing for me, troubling. So in the meantime, that is why we said that nobody should have even listened to this GPA globally. They shouldn't have even taken their report, because this is an organization that has squatted on power as head of the GPA for the last 5 years, of which 3 years they've been illegally squatting on the leadership of the GPA. These are undemocratic squatters. So you're going to hear them cuss me out, but that's how I feel. If it had happened, it was APNU, I would have said the same thing. I'm defending what is right. And we don't have in the PPP any problem speaking out about that. They're free to cuss me back, and they do that all the time. But I'm going to speak what I believe in. Nobody would allow this. No self-respecting society would allow this, particularly coming from journalists who should have had the highest standards of probity. So I don't, right, you ask me what are we going to do internationally? We're going to have to, right, hopefully we can engage people and talk to them about this, but often they don't believe governments. No matter even if you have the truth staring these organizations in the face, because they assume that the local chapter has some integrity. They always assume that there is integrity there. So the same thing with TIGI. Transparency International would think they have integrity, but they're up new front here, as we have seen. Is that all? Is there anything else? Thank you very much. I notice when I speak about the GPA, you're quiet here.